Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I am Amanda.
Laura.
And I'm Kendra.
And before we start, there are a lot of you out there that come up to us and tell us that you've been listening for a year or 2 years or whatever. There are so many of us hurting. If you are getting anything out of this podcast, please share it with colleagues because there's no reason why we should all be as miserable as we are out there. I just had to mention that. This is going to be part 1 of our Blue Zones book club. We read the books and watch the Netflix series so that you don't have to, which is good or something.
That's right.
Or maybe I have obsessive tendencies. Who knows? Whatever reason, here we go. So why are we going to do this? Because we care about you and we want our dogs to live longer, but not just that, live better. So you spend all of your time taking care of others, but you can only be your best when you take care of you too. So before we start, yes, we are doctors, but we're not your doctors. We don't know your particular situation. So this is not medical advice. This is purely educational. And just because I'm obsessive about stuff like this. So Kendra, take it away.
Okay. So yes, definitely this will help you, but make sure that you always check with your medical professional before starting any of these ideas. But in our integrative medicine training, I am a DO and health and wellness coach, and I did a integrative medicine fellowship. There is a lot out there and there's a lot of people with a lot of great ideas, but this Blue Zones book, there is based on actually pockets of people in the world that not only live longer, but they have a better quality of life for as long as they live. So these Blue Zones are a large or a per capita more people reaching the age of 100, so centenarians, for that region. And so that's what a blue zone is, that there's more people living to 100 or more in a certain area that is more dense than anywhere else. And these centenarians are living long, healthy lives. Like they are with it mentally. They have no cognitive impairment. They walk unassisted, and they're getting surgeries or seeing doctors or anything that last decade of life. We always talk about Dr. Peter Attia's book, Outlive, the longevity medicine. These people live it. So in this series, we'll be using the Blue Zone, Secrets for Living Longer, lessons from the healthiest places on earth. And we encourage everyone to pick up a copy, but if you'd rather just watch the 4-part series on Netflix, be my guest. In the intro, Dan Buettner mentions Americans spend $151 billion with a B on vitamins and supplements yearly. Yikes. 21 billion with a B on protein supplements yearly, and another 160 billion with a B trying to exercise each year. So we're certainly spending a lot, but are we spinning our wheels? And you might be thinking, well, if all of this money delve into all these supplements, exercise, all this stuff's not working, then maybe it's just all genetics. But in a Danish twin study in 1996, it showed that longevity is only mildly heritable, only accounting for about a fourth of the differences between people. The rest is determined by your environment. So the places that we're going to delve into are Sardinia, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Loma Linda, California, Icaria, Greece. Icaria. Yes, I'm definitely from there, obviously, and others. These are the places we're going to focus on. So as a preview, there are some common denominators. In these places, they eat a lot of plant-forward diet, so a lot of whole foods, fresh foods, foods off plants. That's a big deal. They incorporate the whole plant into most of their recipes. And instead of trotting off to the gym, they actually move naturally and frequently through the day. So they walk everywhere. They walk to the store, they walk to the neighbor's house, they walk everywhere. So a lot of it is incorporated in their daily movement, and it's seemingly effortless. There's also daily rituals like prayer, honoring one's ancestors, napping. Woo woo, can I get a nap? That help them downshift and lower stress. So there you go, right there. There's your permission to nap. And they tend to honor and keep their elders close. So we've talked about this before, the Rosito effect and the power of community. This is essential, guys. We've talked about how loneliness is an independent risk factor, almost as much as smoking for early heart disease and death. So they have good social support systems, once again, community, and they maintain a sense of purpose. So as you can see, this is all free, guys. I mean, maybe putting up a garden and going to eat the Whole Foods or just going to Whole Foods. But the rest of this, meditating, napping, moving throughout your day, community, social support, none of that costs anything. So,
yeah. And in fact, most of these places tend to be not wealthy places. So just this isn't going to hurt your
just giving you
pocketbook at all, guys.
perspective. Yeah, giving you perspective.
You just paid your taxes, so we can all simmer down. This is free.
The napping is the best news all day.
Yeah,
I love
for
that.
sure.
So let's talk about Sardinia. Sardinia is an island west of Italy. In the center of it, there are 6 villages in a blue zone. Here, they have 10 times the rate of centenarians than in the US. There's a fierce loyalty to family, especially their elders. And it's common for elders to live with their families, and they're expected to pitch in with things like healthcare, cooking, gardening, etc. I think this is so key, is that it helps the people remain engaged with life and actually living, rather than just like sitting in the recliner watching Jeopardy or whatever is the norm for Americans. But they're still doing chores and engaging with their family. On the flip side, there's no long-term care facilities here. I think that's great. They take care of their own. Sardinia is one of the places where men reach 100 nearly at the same rate as women. So for every one woman who's reaching 100, men are as well. And in most places, there's an advantage of women reaching 100, 4 times that of men. Additionally, dementia is nearly cut in half from US rates, and there's a marker on the Y chromosome in men, obviously, that's rare elsewhere in the world. So some genetics is likely at play for these people in Sardinia. But spouses of centenarians, they are lived longer than siblings, suggesting diet and lifestyle may have a bigger influence than genes. So that's fascinating. Interestingly, people over 90 in the Sardinian blue zone have twice as much of an odd chain saturated fatty acid associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and chronic inflammation. It doesn't come from the foods they eat. It's speculated that their microbiomes created during fermentation of fiber. I'm so excited with all this microbiome research. It's just amazing what all it affects. As more evidence, older folks there have much greater biodiversity in their guts than expected. So our microbiomes decline as we age, and theirs is much more in line with someone 3 decades younger. So this would be a huge benefit of their plant-forward diets. So just to review, the more fiber we eat, that just provides more substrate for our microbiomes to live on. So if we're eating just cheese and meat, it's going to make it tougher for the microbiome to thrive. So their plant-forward diet definitely is a benefit here.
Oversimplifying, the bad stuff that you don't want thrives off sugar, and then the microbiome that you do want thrives off of plants.
Yeah. So another interesting oddity that they have is their thyroid hormones are particularly low. Fascinating. They eat a lot of cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, etc., which are suspected to lower thyroid hormone, but they're also likely iodine deficient, which is interesting. I wouldn't think that that would make you live longer, but activity factors,
oddities.
Just oddities. 50 years ago, most of the men were shepherds or farmers who spent all day in motion. The labor wasn't strenuous or stressful, but it did require that they walk miles every day. Sardinia is really steep, like there's a lot of hills there. Day-to-day living involves going up and down steep streets to go to church, the store, or to go visit friends. And I think an application here is that if you continue to live in a house with stairs, I think it improves, I don't have the study in front of me, but it improves longevity. So the trend to just move to a one-level home when we get older might not be the best for our health. Some other social factors are they're optimistic, curious, and conscientious. We know that being optimistic is known to benefit our health in many, many ways, mental and physical health. Older people don't retire so much as they shift jobs. And I think that it's pretty clear that that is beneficial here as well. If you look at people who retire early and don't replace their job or don't replace it with some other avocation, it's not necessarily great for their health. And the people who continue to work because they choose to, not necessarily because they have to, but because they choose to do better. This keeps them active and using their brains. And I have an example of this from my own life. My mom just recently retired. She is 77 and she retired just like last year, and not like where she worked closed. So that's why she retired. She wasn't wanting to retire, but it definitely has helped her stay active. So many of her friends have like declined so much or died, even friends younger than her, and she's doing great because she has continued to stay active. The importance of family is also a contributor to their well-being. All the centenarians, this is something Buettner said, was all the centenarians I met told me La Familia was the most important thing in their lives, their purpose. So again, those social connections, especially family, are extremely important to our well-being. And I have to imagine that knowing that your family is going to take care of you and that you're going to remain a vital part of that family unit, even as you age, that's got to help promote like a reason for wanting to live. And, you know, it's got to help you just feel better about being alive and make you want to live longer. I think if you're just like relegated to a long-term care facility, it's like the sooner I can get out of this place, the better, you know?
Yeah,
You're
I think
actively
that's
choosing to go towards the light.
Yeah, I think that's a huge
Yeah.
thing. I mean, how many times do we take care of someone in the ED and their family basically drops them off and is like, I just can't do this. And
Yeah.
the poor family member is like, I mean, granted, they probably do need care and maybe the family needs respite. I'm not trying to, downplay that at all. But I mean, can you imagine like these places don't even have long-term care facilities? And to consider that the perspective from the family is that that is their purpose. Like, yes, they're going to, make a living for their family, but their purpose is also to take care of family, generations, multi-generation communities and families. That has to reduce the anxiety of the older generations. And so no wonder they're protected against things like dementia and depression and all of those things, because there's just that given that the younger generations of the families, that's what they do. So that has to help with that whole idea of, giving them purpose and vice versa.
I
Yeah.
think one thing to bring up, though, that this is given that your family isn't just absolutely toxic. Yeah. In which case, you would be much better off to create your own family with people who are
Absolutely.
non-toxic. Please do
Yes.
not take
Yes.
us to be saying you need to spend even more time with that toxic family member because of blue zones.
No.
That's not what we're saying.
No.
These are lovely
No.
people that they're spending time with. Okay.
Yes.
So some takeaways from Sardinia is number one, they eat a peasant plant-based diet. All of these places are remote. They don't have access to all of the finer things in life. They are living basically like peasants. So their diets are filled with cheap, classic peasant foods like whole grain sourdough breads, which interestingly, the sourdough fermentation process breaks down the grains and it makes it far less glycemic than some of our other breads. So they eat the sourdough bread, tons of beans. People in the blue zones eat like 4 times the amount of legumes and beans that we do. They eat garden vegetables, fruits, olive oil, and then they eat pecorino cheese. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that happens to be high in omega-3 fatty acids. Goat's milk is their go-to dairy if they have dairy at all, and it's usually those cheeses. And then meat is only used on special occasions on Sundays. So the longest lived family in the world eats minestrone soup every day for lunch. I mean, it's basic. So that's good news. And all I'm saying is that if we model our diets based on that, we're not out buying the latest zone thing or Atkins thing, or you see what I'm saying? Like there's something new all the time coming out. So we have to keep buying stuff. All I'm saying is this family has eaten minestrone soup for at least 50 years. So there you go. Also,
Is
number
there a
2,
minestrone soup recipe available online?
it is
I
actually
love
in the book.
minestrone.
There'll be a link to the Blue Zones book. He has it, and I can't remember what the family's name is, but they have the most people that are 100 in the world. They put family first. That is something that we talked about earlier. Their family values ensure every member is cared for and therefore suffer lower rates of depression, suicide, and stress. And again, like we talked about before, I don't think that applies if you have a super toxic family member. So don't sweat it. If you needed to cut somebody out of your life, don't undo that unless you're ready. Number 3, they celebrate their elders. This is something I think we do a particularly terrible job of in Western societies. In their families, grandparents participate. They are expected to help rear the kids. Like, it's not just they have to stay active. And in exchange, the families provide support, and then the grandparents provide love, financial help, and continue the traditions that are so important in families. The other thing is they're not going to CrossFit. CrossFit's great, but that's not what these people are doing. They are walking up and down hills. And traditionally, they were walking more than 5 miles a day doing their shepherding work. Walking around isn't joint pounding. And so Dan says, if you want to live to 100, you're much better off living in a walkable area than you are running off to the gym 3 to 4 times a week. And if you want extra longevity, live somewhere where streets are steep. And then number 5, so this one's controversial, but it's in the book, so we'll just mention it. Consider a little red wine. And the problem is, Peter Attia says in his book Outlive that these wine studies are all heavily biased by healthy, like people who are healthy are drinking rather than the wine actually making you healthy. So do whatever you want to, but if you want to have a little red wine, that's what these people are doing. Not a lot. And then specifically in Sardinia, their wine is a Cannonau kind of wine, which is made in a little bit different way from what we have in the United States. This particular wine has 2 to 3 times the flavonoids that other wines do. And then number 6, they laugh with friends. Men here are famous for their sardonic humor, which I think sounds like they would be perfect fits for the ER. It's our dark humor. Yep. They gather with friends in the streets daily and laugh often with others. So another point is that laughter counts as cardio if you're laughing particularly hard, and lowers stress, so bring it on. And so that's your tips from Sardinia.
Yay, Sardinia. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, I think another thing too, with some of these areas that have a lot of sunshine too, notice that they are getting outside, that they're shepherding or they're gardening or they're doing things where you're out in nature. So that by itself, we've talked about this multiple times, lower stress, increases, vitamin D. It, helps with sleep. So I'm sure these people are sleeping well too. And let me tell you, I'm the sleep guru here. So I think, being on that regular circadian rhythm, which, obviously all of us ER docs out there and nocturnists aren't always on that, but getting outside has a huge impact on sleep. And that has to be one of the reasons that their brain is protected from dementia. They don't see dementia because we didn't mention this, but they probably sleep very well. If they're walking 5 miles a day and eating that good, they're also sleeping very well. And so I think that's also an interesting point to say that, getting outside, getting in nature, being able to,
it affects your microbiome too. Mm-hmm. Like being outside changes your microbiome. So that'll be interesting.
Things.
Yep. Mm-hmm. All good things.
Yeah. All good things. So, well, thank you for our part 1. Thank you for joining us for part 1 of our club on blue zones. And we do want to once again encourage you, help us help you. Leave a review for us, rate us and review us, is what we said, because then that way other doctors just like you listening right now can find us. And I mean, who wouldn't want to listen to the Drive Time Debrief? So I see no objection. But we recently launched a new version of our online course, Wellness 911. So go to our website, www.thewholephysician.com, and check it out. We take demoralized doctors from fried to fantastic with our easy and evidence-based Wellness 911 program. And as always, until next time, you are whole, you are a gift to medicine, and the work you do matters.